What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today I want to talk some Steve Wilks. He was on the official New York Jets podcast and I thought had some interesting quotes that were worthwhile to share. One of the things that I found interesting was that Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn have never worked together before in the past. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times we see a coordinator, whether on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, get an opportunity to be a head coach, and they bring along guys that they've worked with along the way to become their coordinators. Well, that wasn't the case for Aaron Glenn, but Steve Wilks notes that they were in the same division for a while with, when Aaron Glenn was in the New Orleans Saints organization, and then Steve Wilks was with the Carolina Panthers. And what happened was they talked a ton at the combine, and they just realized how much their philosophies aligned with each other. So it felt like a good fit for Aaron Glenn and for Steve Wilks. Now, speaking of the philosophy on defense, Steve Wilks was asked about that, and two things he talks about: being aggressive and man coverage.
Well, one, just, being aggressive through our base fundamentals, number one, starting with that. Having guys on the perimeter that can cover and play man-to-man. Just our identity, how the defense should be shaped. Everything starts up front with really an aggressive mentality, So just those conversations over the years, man, we just, realize that we're on the same page.
A little different from what we are used to. Robert Saleh played a ton of zone coverage, and one of the things that Wilks mentioned was his guys outside playing man. And I know they haven't done it a ton, but Sauce Gardner is really perfect for this kind of style of philosophy with, 2009 and really more so 2010. I know that technically 09 defense was better, but in 2010, Antonio Cromartie comes in as the number 2 corner and Darrelle Revis obviously opposite of him. The Jets were able to be so aggressive and blitz so often because they had 2 elite level cover corners. I mean, how many teams would Antonio Cromartie been a number 1 corner on? But since he was with the Jets and Darrelle Revis was here, he wasn't. A lot. He's a really damn good, and was a really good damn football player. For me, I am excited to see them change this philosophy. I know that it worked for a while with Robert Saleh. I don't have, any ill will towards him about his defense. I think he did a good job with his D, but they have the personnel to change things up a little bit. And I'm excited to see how Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn implement this philosophy. Wilks was also asked about the focus on takeaways, and I thought he gave a really good answer.
Is this a fair assessment of the way you go about it? You are an aggressive play caller who is a guy who's going to emphasize takeaways at every turn.
That's my foundation. And when I came in the league with Lovie Smith, it was just really with Chicago, taking the football away, with Peanut Tillman, the Peanut Punch, Chris Harris, who's on the staff right now as the secondary coach, pass game coordinator. He was another guy on that team that believed in really stripping and taking the ball away. And everywhere I've been, that's always been our mantra, So that's something that we're going to continue to coach and emphasize here. I'm all about the fundamentals and technique. Coach AG talks about it all the time. It's not about our scheme. It's about our play style. And that's the one thing that we want to continue to emphasize, being physical, being smart, all right, and understanding how to finish, not only on the field, all right, but even in the building.
So that is going to be a big part of the Jets defense. And outside of 2023, the Jets haven't really done all that well over the last 3 years. I'm looking at the last 3-year sample. They ranked 24th in turnovers this year, 9th in 2023, and then 29th in 2022. Now, that to me wasn't the main focus of the Robert Saleh defense. If it happened, great, but we're gonna get home with our front four and we're just gonna cover people and rack up a bunch of sacks. And it worked, and they were a really good defense. But if you were to criticize anything about this Robert Saleh defense and the era, that we just went through, they weren't great turnover and change of possession defense. And I think that'll change with this philosophy. They're going to blitz Jamie Sherwood and Quincy Williams a lot more at linebacker. They might have someone screaming off, on a corner blitz. And, you force a young quarterback or any quarterback really into a bad throw and you capitalize on it. Hopefully this also means that Sauce Gardner catches a couple interceptions this year. That would just add a little extra element to the naysayers who are very critical of Sauce Gardner. Also, pretty much last thing for me, it was a quote from Steve Wilks on being a former head coach and being able to help out Aaron Glenn in that capacity.
He's an accomplished coach himself, but this is his first time as a head coach in the National Football League?
I think it's just always trying to draw on past experiences when things come up, and a lot of those aren't really related to football. So having an ear that someone who's gone through it and can really understand the situation that he's sitting in that seat. So I think that's so important to have that outlet and have that guy. Because sometimes in that seat, man, you feel like there's no one you can talk to because you're really dealing with different things way beyond football. So I think, I can be a sounding board for him in regards to that.
I really like when a first-time head coach has someone that's been a head coach that they can rely on. And a part of me wishes that it came on the offensive side of the ball, which is part of the reason why I wanted Todd Haley to be on this staff in some capacity, just because of all of his experience as both an offensive coordinator and as a head coach for a few years. But the example that I always bring up is one that I think worked really well. When Sean McVay first got to the Rams as their head coach, he was really young, and they paired him with Wade Phillips, a veteran defensive coordinator, had a ton of great defenses, had a head coaching experience in Dallas, really, really good football coach. And that duo was excellent right out of the gate, and they were really good. Obviously, both Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks come from the same side of the ball, the defense, but I think the philosophy is still the same, that you want to have someone that your young coach can rely on. And hopefully Steve Wilks can be the guy who guides Aaron Glenn through the early stages of becoming a head coach. Unfortunately, the Jets staff with Robert Saleh did not really have those guys, unless you want to count Nathaniel Hackett, who was an abject failure as a head coach. I mean, I don't think Steve Wilks is on Nate Hackett level, and I don't think Wade Phillips was on Nate Hackett level. But, other than that, there's really not too many examples of guys that they had on these staffs that, could be leaned on as a former head coach. So that's another addition that I really like. But just wanted to come on here today and talk about some of those big quotes. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.